Imagine a child no older than 10, her eyes reflecting a terror no child should ever know. Her tiny body, still bearing the marks of childhood innocence, is ravaged by unspeakable acts. She is a commodity, bought and sold in the dark corners of the internet. This is not a scene from a horror film. It is the horrifying reality for countless children around the globe. This is the abyss we must confront, a darkness that preys on the most vulnerable among us. This is a call to action, a plea to shine light into the darkest corners of our world. We can no longer afford to be silent, to turn away from the suffering of these children. The most potent weapon in the arsenal of abusers is silence. They thrive in the shadows, weaving a tapestry of fear and intimidation that keeps their victims trapped. Children, often too young to understand the complexities of abuse, are silenced by threats, manipulation, and a profound sense of shame. This silence is further enforced by societal pressures, by the stigma associated with speaking out against powerful individuals and institutions. We live in a world where image is everything, where reputation trumps truth. The powerful, the wealthy, the influential, they understand the currency of silence, and they wield it with ruthless efficiency. But silence is not just a weapon used against the victims, it is a shield that protects the perpetrators. It allows them to operate with impunity, to continue their reign of terror unchecked. Every time we choose to look away, to prioritize comfort over confrontation, we become complicit in this conspiracy of silence. We become enablers of the darkness. Religion, often seen as a beacon of hope, has been tragically twisted by some into a tool for exploitation. Institutions meant to provide sanctuary have become hunting grounds for predators. Priests and religious leaders betray trust, preying on the innocent. Power dynamics create an environment ripe for abuse. Children, raised to revere religious figures, are conditioned to obey without question. This blind faith becomes a weapon in the hands of abusers. We must demand accountability and a shift in power dynamics to protect the vulnerable. Power, in its many forms, can be intoxicating, corrupting. For some, it becomes a license to exploit, a shield to deflect accountability. We have seen time and again how the wealthy, the influential, the politically connected, leverage their positions to gain access to and control over vulnerable individuals, including children. The allure of power, the sense of entitlement it breeds, can warp even the strongest moral compass. We have seen it in the halls of government, in the boardrooms of corporations, in the gated communities of the privileged, a sense of being above the law, of operating within a different set of rules. These individuals, often shielded by a network of enablers and fixers, operate with a sense of impunity. Their wealth buys silence, their influence manipulates legal systems, their connections ensure that their secrets remain buried. We must pierce this veil of privilege, expose the mechanisms that protect these predators, and hold them accountable for their crimes regardless of their status or influence. Section 5. The price of fame, when idols become monsters. The entertainment industry, with its dazzling lights and promises of glamour, often masks a dark underbelly. The pursuit of fame, the relentless pressure to maintain a certain image, can create a breeding ground for exploitation and abuse. We have seen countless cases of child actors, models, and musicians subjected to horrific abuse at the hands of those who promised them stardom. The power dynamics within the entertainment industry are often skewed, with young, aspiring artists vulnerable to the whims of casting directors, agents, and producers. The desire for recognition, for a chance to break into the industry, can blind individuals to the red flags, to the subtle and not so subtle forms of manipulation and coercion. The culture of silence, the fear of jeopardizing one's career, the normalization of certain behaviors, these factors contribute to an environment where abuse can thrive. We must challenge these power structures, empower young artists to recognize and report abuse, and hold those who exploit their positions accountable for their actions. the global trade of innocence. Human trafficking ensnares millions of children worldwide. They are seen as commodities, bought and sold for sex, labor, and organ harvesting. Hidden in plain sight, their suffering invisible to the outside world. Organized criminal networks make it difficult to combat, exploiting poverty, conflict, and weak law enforcement. We must disrupt these networks and support survivors. A coordinated global effort is essential to dismantle these networks. Turning a blind eye to the suffering. We live in a world saturated with information, bombarded by images and stories. Yet, we often choose to look away from uncomfortable truths. The suffering of children becomes a distant echo, a statistic. This willful blindness is the most insidious form of complicity. We must cultivate empathy, educate ourselves, and demand action. The scars of childhood trauma run deep, leaving lasting wounds on the minds and souls of survivors. The physical and emotional abuse, the betrayal of trust, the loss of innocence. These experiences can have a profound impact on a child's development, shaping their relationships, their sense of self-worth, their very being. Survivors of childhood abuse often struggle with a range of challenges, from PTSD and anxiety to depression and substance abuse. The trauma can manifest in various ways, impacting their ability to form healthy relationships, trust others, and navigate the world safely. The pain, often buried deep within, can resurface unexpectedly, triggered by seemingly innocuous events. We must create a world where survivors of abuse are met with compassion and understanding, where they have access to the resources and support they need to heal. This includes providing access to therapy, counseling, and support groups, as well as addressing the systemic issues that often prevent survivors from seeking help, such as stigma, shame, and fear of retribution. The fight to protect children from exploitation and abuse requires a collective effort, a global movement united in its determination to dismantle the systems that perpetuate this darkness. This is not a battle that can be won in isolation. It demands collaboration, coordination, and a shared commitment to justice. We need stronger laws, stricter enforcement, and international cooperation to combat trafficking networks and bring perpetrators to justice. We need to invest in education and awareness campaigns to empower children, parents, and communities to recognize and report abuse. We need to challenge the cultural norms and power structures that allow exploitation to thrive. This is not just about punishing the guilty. It is about creating a world where children are safe, valued, and empowered. It is about breaking the cycle of abuse, ensuring that future generations do not have to endure the same horrors. This is a fight for the soul of humanity, a fight we cannot afford to lose. Despite the darkness, despite the horrors we have witnessed, we must never surrender to despair. The resilience of the human spirit, the unwavering love of parents and caregivers, the tireless work of advocates and organizations, these are the flames of hope that illuminate the path forward. We must celebrate the victories, no matter how small, for they remind us that change is possible. Every child rescued from trafficking, every abuser brought to justice, every survivor who finds their voice. These are victories that fuel our determination, that remind us why we fight. We must never underestimate the power of our collective action, our unwavering commitment to creating a world where children are safe, loved, and free from fear. This is a future worth fighting for, a future we must build together, brick by brick, act by act, until the darkness is vanquished and the light of hope shines upon every child. Imagine for a moment that we are not alone in this vast universe. Imagine that somewhere beyond the stars, there exists a civilization far more advanced than our own. A civilization that has evolved beyond the darkness that plagues humanity. A civilization that has learned to protect its most vulnerable, to value compassion over greed, empathy over indifference. What if these beings, these intergalactic guardians of innocence, were to turn their gaze upon our world? What would they see? Would they see the suffering, the exploitation, the callous disregard for the sanctity of childhood? Or would they see the flickers of hope, the tireless efforts of those fighting for a better future? This is not a call for divine intervention, but a thought experiment, a way to challenge our perspectives, to imagine a world where the protection of children is paramount, non-negotiable. Perhaps by embracing this ideal, by striving to create a world worthy of intergalactic admiration, we can finally banish the shadows that have haunted our children for far too long.